Welcome to the Fandom Podcast Network special presentation of Time Warp. We are discussing Time Warp 1984, the 40th anniversary of movies and pop culture. And we're going to be discussing September of 1984. And I'm just going to tease you right now, it was an awesome month for new television. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Of course, my name is Kevin, and I'm going to be your host, but I got to get in my co-host here. We got Time Warp back with my buddies here. And I'm going to bring in the queen of movie foo, Miss Lacee Adderhole. What's going on?
Not a lot. I'm excited to talk about some TV, some movies, and some stuff. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, excited. We got a lot to cover. And with me, as always, is co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, my brother from another mother, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's up, buddy?
Well, for this particular episode of Time Warp, I've had a big problem, Kevin. I'm debating, do I go with some Lucky Charms? Do I go with some Cinnamon Toast Crunch? Do I go with, maybe some Cocoa Pebbles? Because we are hitting the epitome of Saturday morning cartoons in this particular Time Warp 2. So I might just say screw it and go with the Kelsey combo cereal that's just come out that mixes like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Lucky Charms, and like one other. I think like it might be like Tricks or Fruit Loops or something like that, all in one cereal. I'm just going for the.
There might have been 5 people that got that reference, Kyle.
I know, but that's.
I got that reference, and it sounds disgusting. I don't know, something about Cinnamon Toast Crunch with. Nope. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
This is Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback show here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and we are discussing the movies of 1984, but we will be spending some time on the TV. And look at those handsome people there. They're at the palatial estate of movies there at Lacee's house there. Check that out. That was a fun visit. So there you go. All right, guys.
You know what that shows me that I need to get a Fandom Podcast Network t-shirt.
T-Public anyone.
We've had a lot of fun this year on Time Warp. I did a NFL Raiders players who acted in movies and television. Last year we did a Buffy retrospective. And this is the 9th month that we're discussing Time Warp, which is September. So go back and check out. We did January and February and all the other months of 1984. It was a banger year, and we are not done yet. This is September, talking movies and TV of 1984. So, guys, I want to know, are you ready to get back into 1984? Let's fuel up that DeLorean with the flux capacitor. Slingshot around the sun aboard that captured Klingon bird of prey. Take a step into that blue police box or phone booth and step into that quantum leap accelerator. Or take a dip in that hot tub time machine with what is it that we need to fuel that with again, Kyle?
This time around we fuel it by putting in a copy of Chud.
Chud.
No.
Not Chernobyl, but Chud.
That is so bad.
Let's take a step back to 1984. All right, we always like to showcase a little bit of what's happening in the world news, kind of, set the mood, what was happening there. And in September, we had some interesting things happening. British geneticist Alex Jeffries develops genetic fingerprinting, allowing him to identify people using their DNA. The method, when commercialized, will allow forensic scientists to assist with solving crimes. Has that worked out, people? I mean, been some shows about that, I think, right?
Yeah. If nothing else, it gave CBS a complete evening lineup for about 5 years.
Yeah. In September 10th of 1984, inspired by the death of a classmate from cancer, young Sean O'Keefe cycles from Santa Monica, California to New York. O'Keefe, age just 11, is the youngest person to cycle coast to coast across America, and his 24-day bike ride is funded and supported by his immediate family. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I share a birthday of a certain royal. September 15th, Princess Diana gives birth to her second child with Prince Charles. The new prince's name is announced the next day as Henry Charles Albert David, otherwise known as Prince Harry, otherwise known as my neighbor, because he lives here in Santa Barbara. So there you go.
So tomorrow you guys are collaborating. You and Aaron, Harry and Meghan. It's all.
Yeah. We hang out down there at the beach. Go bike ride and stuff like that. So yeah, there you go. And the last thing, in September 18th, former United States Air Force Colonel Joe Kittinger sets a world record for the longest flight made in a 3,000 cubic meter balloon. In doing so, Kittinger becomes the first solo person to fly a gas balloon across the Atlantic. He flies from Caribou, Maine, aiming to land in Russia, but instead crash landed in Montenegro, Italy. Oops, what happened there?
He just wanted some pizza.
There you go. Let's get into some celebrity births. All right. Were you born in 84? Well, here's some famous people you might be sharing birthdays with in September. One of my favorite actors, Garrett Hedlund, actor, model, and singer. Kyle Mooney, people may know him from Saturday Night Live, actor, comedian, and writer. Adam Lamberg, actor. I believe he was doing the Lizzie McGuire movies and stuff like that. Eve Marie, actress, fashion designer, model, and wrestler. And let me get this in there. Lydia Hearst, actress and fashion model. Matt Kemp, baseball player. Zach Woods, actor and comedian. You may not remember Zach, but he was in The Office. He has that kind of straight-looking nerdy face. He was also in what's the Silicon Valley? When you see him, you go, oh, you know who that guy is. And then Melody Thornton, singer and member of the Pussycat Dolls, all 40 years old this month. So there you go.
Notable fact: Lydia Hearst is the heir to the Hearst fortune. She's Patty Hearst's daughter.
Ah, okay. The name sounds familiar, definitely.
Yeah, she's married to Chris Hardwick.
Really?
Yeah,
interesting.
They have a wee baby.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Cool. I know she's been in some stuff too. I just can't remember exactly, but yeah. All right, guys, let's hit some music. I always like to hit some music from 1984. And in September, there was some interesting things that happened. Very memorable. First of all, September 2nd, Van Halen concludes its 1984 world tour with a show in Nuremberg, Germany, as part of the Monsters of Rock Festival tour. This would be the band's last concert with David Lee Roth as lead singer until 2007. Wow.
End of an era.
Yeah, definitely.
I never realized how her suit Van Halen was until I saw this photo. I don't think I've ever seen them with their shirts off. They're very furry.
Oh, gotcha.
Her suit is the adjective. Yeah.
Say that again. Sorry.
Suit. They are
her suit.
Her it's her suit. It's the adjective for when one has a hairy chest.
Her suit.
Her suit.
Okay, gotcha. So you're saying David Lee Roth has a furry chest.
I'm looking at these pictures. I didn't realize how fuzzy some of these gentlemen were. I don't think I've ever seen them with their shirts off.
Yes.
They're very fuzzy gentlemen.
Yes, definitely. Especially, Mr. Lee Roth there. He definitely had the furry chest. Definitely. Well, this didn't last very long, guys. The marriage between Janet Jackson and singer James DeBarge. She elopes with him. The marriage would be annulled in 1985. And I believe there was a song or two that she may have been inspired from this marriage.
So what you're saying is DeBarge and Janet couldn't find the beat or the rhythm of the night?
You could say that, Kyle. Next, we almost lost a legend here, but she survived. September 11th, country singer Barbara Mandrell suffers serious injuries in a head-on automobile collision on a Tennessee highway. She would make a comeback after spending over a year rehabilitating, and she did some print ads for safety driving. And here's a picture I have up here on YouTube. Please buckle up. You may never get another chance. And she's standing next to a damaged car, which I don't know if it is hers, but it's she's signing off on the safe driving there. So glad that she did survive that.
Hey, can we hit up just how big this was and how big Barbara Mandrell was at the time when this happened, because she had the show with her sisters. She was a huge country star. She kind of was hitting that Kenny Rogers transcending just out of country and mainstream at that point. And so this was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
The picture itself, I'm more inclined to believe this was the actual car, because at the bottom of the picture it says her quote, "My children, Matt and Jamie and I were not safety belt users, but minutes before this crash, we put them on. Experts tell if we would have been killed without safety belts. I share this with you out of love, so please buckle up. You may never get another chance. Barbara Mandrell." There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The next bit of news was pretty big. September 14th, the first annual MTV Music Awards are held in New York City. Herbie Hancock wins the most awards with 5, and the Cars take the highest prize of Video of the Year for You Might Think. Much attention is garnered by Madonna's controversial performance of her hit single, Like a Virgin, in which she rolls around on the stage, revealing lacy stockings and garters, and grinds her crotch against her veil. I remember this very well, guys. I was watching this live. Do you?
Oh, come on. Every year for like 20 years on the MTV Music Awards, we'd flash back to the greatest moments in MTV Music Award history, and this would be in there somewhere.
Yes. Lacey, do you remember this?
I do. I think I remember. I do. I know the one album, but after that, I couldn't tell you a Madonna song.
Gotcha. All right, we have another interesting news here, guys. And I didn't really know this at the time, and I was kind of curious about it. September 21st, the first compact disc manufacturing plant in North America opens in Terre Haute, Indiana. CDs have previously had to be expensively imported from Japan or West Germany. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA is designated as the first CD ever made in the United States.
How appropriate. When it shouldn't have been anything else.
Born in the USA, yeah. And if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check out the video version on YouTube, because we're showing all these cool pictures here. But yeah, I did not know that. So let's get into the top songs of 1984, the Billboard Hot 100. And each month we've been talking about a little bit of them. And the next bit we have here are some good ones. You can tell we're getting close up to the top 10 and such, because all these songs are, at least most of these are bangers here. So we'll start with 31 through 24. 31 is Oh Sherry by Steve Perry. 30 is The Glamorous Life by Sheila E. 29, I Can Dream About You, Dan Hartman. 88 is 99 Luft Balloons by Nena. 27 is Break My Stride by Matthew Wilder. Or is it Breaking My Stride? Break My Stride?
Ain't nobody gonna break my stride.
One of my favorites too, and with a backing vocal by Mr. Michael Jackson, is Somebody's Watching Me by Rockwell.
But wait, Kevin, you didn't tell me it was midnight.
Oh, yes. And number 25, I Just Called to Say I Love You by Stevie Wonder. And we round out this group with 24, Joanna by Kool and the Gang. All right, Lacey, I know this isn't your strong point, but I always like to get your opinion. Of these, which ones are your favorites, if you even know them?
I know all but one of these.
Which is the one you don't?
I don't know The Glamorous Life by Sheila E. Is it?
Go watch the video.
Yeah.
Do I know it? It's just not. Is The Glamorous Life not the hook? That's the thing, because all the rest of them are kind of like named after the, But I would say Somebody's Watching Me is great. I Can Dream About You. Oh Sherry. It's a lot of ballads this time.
Yeah.
Right on.
What about you, Kyle?
I can always say, Oh Sherry, I Just Called to Say I Love You. Oh Sherry, probably Steve Perry's only really true successful single after he tried to go solo from Journey.
Right.
Rockwell, Somebody's Watching Me with Michael Jackson. That's just a classic. And you got ain't nobody's gonna break my stride. I'm just saying, nobody's gonna slow me down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff here. My favorite, I think, is Someone's Watching Me. And what was interesting about several songs that had come out in the early into mid 80s was there was that paranoia vibe that was going on. We obviously had the Cold War going on with Russia. And that was definitely one of the most paranoia songs out there. But then Michael Jackson coming in and singing the chorus and just killing it. I love 99 Left Balloons by Nena. Great. And I Can Dream About You. Good song. That one I can just hear over and over and over.
I can dream about you. Kevin, but let's be honest here. How many guys put the cassette in the boombox, called their girlfriend, and started playing some Stevie Wonder?
I just called to say I love you. Yeah. That was like that had people like, when they would do the dedications on the movie and said,
yeah,
the next one is I just called to say I love you by Stevie Wonder, from Kyle to Suzanne, Lacey to name ex-boyfriend.
I thought you were just making up words.
It was funny because
what?
Kevin, are you sure you weren't channeling your spirit of Casey Kasem there?
I was. That's exactly what I was doing.
I have Casey Kasem stuffed duck.
Okay.
I have a giant 5-foot stuffed duck that Casey Kasem had. It was at his garage sale, and he was super nice, and I was asking about his foliage, and he took me and my friends on a tour of the house and like showed us all the foliage in the backyard. It was bizarre. Weirdest thing ever.
I like the fact that you led that off with Casey Kasem's duck instead of saying, I've met Casey Kasem.
That's fair.
You might want to start off with that first.
A lot of people have met Casey Kasem. I actually have a 5-foot stuffed duck that used to belong to Casey Kasem.
You start off with saying, I've met Casey Kasem, and then you say, I've been to his house, and then you go, oh, and then I got a duck out of it.
I also have a stuffed dragon, but I gave that to my sister, so it's not technically mine.
That is awesome. But yes, I was doing my Casey Kasem, because remember, he would do the dedications too, and then we would all be holding our boom box, getting ready to record on the cassette tape as soon as he stopped talking, so yeah. All right, as I teased earlier at the top of the show, we've got some TV to talk about, so let's go ahead and let's hit, as I said, television shows of 1984. Okay, so I hit you guys up saying, look, we got to spend more time talking about the television series that came out, or debuted, I should say, in September of 1984. And I'm going to just throw this out at the beginning, and I'm going to have you guys think about it, but don't answer the question yet. And same for the listeners. I could go back at 86 and 85 and all these other ones, but I want to throw it out there saying that I think September, the fall of 1984, could be one of the most memorable, legendary television debut months of all time. So just leave that, let that sink in a little bit. Don't answer the question.
Huge fan.
Kyle?
I was just going to say, huge fandom month for television.
Oh yes, definitely. Okay. So what we're going to do is, I counted, there was 31 new shows that debuted in September of 1984, and there's 30 days in September. So that gives you a little idea of what's going on here. We're going to break this up into 3 different blocks. We're going to cover about 10 at a time, and we're going to talk about, the 10 and any memories and feelings that we have about that, and then go to the next block, because I figured that would be the best way to do this. So let's get into the first block here, guys. All right. And one of the things we're going to talk about, I know Kyle's excited about this. I'm going to mention the 10 first, and then I'm going to let you guys comment, and we'll go back and do it that way. Okay. So the first group that we have here is Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats. Then we have Kids Incorporated. All right. Then we have Dragon's Lair. Then we have the Mighty Orbots. Turbo Teen, that's the car that is a kid. And then we have Challenge of the GoBots. We have Voltron. And then we have some other non-cartoon series here in the drama section. We have Glitter. And this is a story of the relationships that go on in the offices of Glitter, a top entertainment magazine starring David Burney, Morgan Brittany, and Arthur Hill. And then September 14th, we had Hawaiian Heat. After leaving their jobs in Chicago, 2 former police officers relocate to Hawaii for positions with the Honolulu Police Department, starring Branscombe Richmond, Tracy Scoggins, Jeff McCracken, and Robert Ginty. That is the first block of cartoons and TV series. Kyle, let's start with you. Which one of these is your favorite and you want to comment on first?
Oh, wait, I'm about to drop some knowledge here because we are right in my alleyway right now with 84 TV shows. So let's start with a little Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats. This was, for me, living in Alaska, this was a weekly syndicated show on WGN, Superstation out of Chicago. Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats was actually two different shows that they kind of melded together to make one. And then you could tell the difference in animation when they would include certain members of the Cadillac Cats tied in with Heathcliff, because it would be new animation compared to what the other two shows looked like when they mixed them together. Heathcliff was always kind of the poor man's Garfield that you add in the Cadillac Cats, but they rode with it, and it lasted for a good while. I lasted several years in syndication on WGN. So I
loved Heathcliff over Garfield. I'll tell you that right now.
You are also anti-lasagna, apparently.
I love it. I love lasagna, but I just like Heathcliff.
But even better yet, let's talk a little KIDS Kids Incorporated. This was a syndicated show that ended up going to the Disney Channel. But this show has put some pretty famous, well-known people out there. Most notable, a little Black Eyed Peas action, a little Duchess Fergie. We're getting Fergalicious out there. That is right. Sarah Ferguson started on Kids Incorporated. In fact, she was the youngest member of the original cast of Kids Incorporated. You also had Marquita, part of the original cast. You might remember her from that song Toy Soldiers that Eminem did a remix of later.
Martika, yeah, I remember that video. Yeah.
For you Monster Squad fans out there, he joined the cast in the second season. Ryan Lambert, who's become a director in Hollywood and has done a lot. But this show actually it came out first on a movie direct to VHS, and then they used that as syndication and broke it up. And then it lasted several seasons. It was kind of the 80s version of the Mickey Mouse Club almost with a lot of, this is where a lot of the kids were going until the Mickey Mouse Club came back in the late 80s and early 90s with Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, all of them young. But this show was incredibly popular, and like I said, for about the first 3 years it was syndication, and then Disney scooped it up for the Disney Channel, and there was things from there.
Two more other big names of note: Mario Lopez and Jennifer Love Hewitt had stints on the show.
That's right. Jennifer Love Hewitt was actually a member of the main cast. Mario Lopez was kind of secondary. He was the drummer for the band, but he was actually on that show for several years, and then he went from that to Saved by the Bell.
You want to talk Dragon's Lair, or do you want me to go first?
I'm going to let you go first on Dragon's Lair, Kevin.
Okay, so I watched Dragon's Lair, but you know what I really, really liked about Dragon's Lair? Not just the cartoon, but I remember walking into a stop-and-go convenience store here in my hometown of Santa Barbara, near my high school, and they had the Dragon's Lair video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you had to play it differently than all other video games. It was a reactionary game where you had to choose all about timing. And then if it took you to the wrong way, you would die. And it was a very interesting thing. And the Mighty Orbots, don't remember them at all. Before I go any further, though, Lacey, of the ones that we've discussed here, is anyone that jump out at you?
Well, for me, Kids Incorporated took over where 3-2-1 Contact left off.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I remember 3-2-1 Contact was like 1980, 81, maybe 82-ish, like in there. It had a couple, 3 seasons. And it was kind of like the science-y show for kids. It was a live action, maybe some, it had like them going on adventures and then talking about the science of the adventure. And this sort of turned into something that was a little bit more like arts oriented, a little bit more fun, kind of just entertainment based. But still, this kind of took up that slot for me. And I dug Kids Incorporated.
When I was doing these notes, I couldn't remember some of these in this group. For example, I don't remember the Mighty Orbots.
Okay.
And I didn't remember Turbo Teen, which is the adventures of a boy who can physically transform into a living car. Kyle?
Yeah, rewind back one slide.
Yeah, he's going back to Dragon's Lair, I feel.
Well, no, Dragon's Lair was great. What I remember about Dragon's Lair is because we also had Space Ace come out about the same time. These Don Bluth video disc games that came out. I mean, people were so blown away. I remember they did a whole episode of That's Incredible. They did a whole segment on Dragon's Lair on That's Incredible where they played the game. But I want to talk about Mighty Orbots because I never get to do this around here. But
what you've got? Hold on.
Yay.
You've got physical media here, Kyle.
What?
this is the only way to get this. This is the entire season of Mighty Orbots. It only lasted one season. It was actually done by a Japanese animation studio. It was actually a popular series, but ABC, one, never settled on a time slot for it and bounced it all over the place. And two, it was incredibly expensive for ABC to make. But the year it came out, it was actually one of the centerpiece shows that ABC was really pushing. I don't know if you guys remember or not, but there used to be a time when right before the new fall season would start, they would always do a special in prime time previewing the upcoming Saturday morning cartoons.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
On each network. And Mighty Orbots for that year was a big push. This is one of those early shows that kind of introduced me, besides Robotech and Voltron, that introduced me to the Japanese style of animation. So yeah, Mighty Orbots is pretty important to me.
Hey, Lacey.
Mm-hmm.
How did we get Kyle to trump us and show a DVD that you and I don't have? He's the digital guy. We're the physical media guys. How did we let this happen? I'm impressed, Kyle. Well done.
I'm very impressed. I don't know that I would purchase that just because I never saw it. I don't know that I would have. I just probably I don't remember it.
I feel like Kyle just laid down a royal flush and walked away
did.
with his money.
He
You know?
was like, mic drop, boom, walks out. Okay.
Well, so I have no memory of Turbo Team, but boy, I was all over the GoBots. I love the GoBots. I loved how cheesy they were. I loved the toys. Kyle and I have gone back and forth on the GoBots. I got chastised earlier on the GoBot toys on a previous episode of Time Warp. Because what did you say, Lacey? It looked like the what of the what?
Well, they looked like it looked like what was it? They looked like Transformers that had that like the
that you ordered from Wish or something like that, right?
Yeah, like Temu or something. No, but you know what it is. You know the blocks that were the kids version, the baby version of Legos, those Duplo blocks.
Duplo.
Right, I don't want to dwell on that anymore. I got it. I got it.
Duplo version of Transformers.
The reason I'm just going to say it one more time. The reason why I like the GoBots because I liked them in the car versions. I thought the car versions and the vehicle versions of the characters were really impressive for a kid. Anyway, I thought.
No judgment either way. I don't really have a dog in that fight. You know.
But so Voltron, we got to talk about Voltron a little bit here, Kyle. Voltron was big. I enjoyed Voltron. I loved how you had the 5 different characters that would then transform into Voltron. Loved Voltron. What do you say?
Okay, first, real quick, I want to roll back to Turbo Teen real quick.
Oh, come on!
No, this is the most bizarre concept ever. Kid gets caught in an experiment where an energy beam morphs him and his car together. Whenever he gets overheated, he turns into his car. When he gets cold, he turns back to human.
Whoa. Okay, I'm glad we went back here. Hold on. You said whenever he gets overheated, he turns into a car?
He turns into his car, yes.
So he basically stayed a virgin his whole life?
Unless they found a cure after this got canceled.
Like she's riding in the car. There's something to be said about that.
Okay, all right.
I don't know how to process what you just said in relation to that statement, but okay.
I'm just, you know what I'm saying. Okay. So yeah, I couldn't find this anywhere except some like intros on YouTube and stuff like that. But yeah
no, I had to drop a little Turbo Teen knowledge, but now we are hitting something important. Voltron, Defender of the Universe, obviously the Lion Force, which is by far the most well-known and most popular Voltron. There was, of course, the vehicle Voltron as well. And in fact, in the late 80s, early 90s, they even did a film where they brought the 2 Voltrons together, which was a classic. But here's the crazy thing about Voltron. Highly edited for U.S. television for kids because it was actually a pretty violent show in its original Japanese version. But here's the kicker. This version of Voltron was not the animation that the company paid for. There was another version with a lion robot that they had intentionally wanted, and they just wanted to buy them. The instructions were to buy the lion Japanese cartoon for our network, and they bought the wrong one. So this is what ended up being Voltron.
Can I just because I haven't seen this, I don't remember it. I mean, obviously I know the references and everything. I know that it exists, but the picture on the left, which is the one that has the robot where he's wearing the lion on each appendage, like he's got two lions on each hand, or one on each hand and one on each foot. It looks like the last guy who's going to walk the runway for Fashion Week. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's accurate. Yep, I got you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Just form the blazing sword and let's move on to the next slide.
Yeah, that's I enjoyed this series. It was fun. So next we've got two dramas, I guess, and I had not heard of these at all. Glitter ABC, story of relationships that go in the offices at Glitter, a top entertainment magazine. I kind of get the feeling it was like, let's make a drama about Entertainment Tonight, but make it more like tabloid and sleazy. That's kind of the feeling I got from it. And, hey, let's have a cop show in Hawaii called Hawaiian Heat. And these did not last very long. But, hey, it had Tracy Scoggins in it.
Yeah,
it also had Mako in it.
Scoggins and Mako, I'd watch that.
And Branscombe Richmond, who is co-star of Renegade. And he's always been in all these films. Always plays like a heavy. Sometimes he plays a bad guy. So, yeah. All right. Let's get into the next group of television shows that debuted in September of 1984. All right. Let's start with Snorks and Pink Panther and Sons. We also had the Get Along Gang and the Muppet Babies. Next, we had Pole Position cartoon series. A teen stunt car team secretly fights crime with the help of their artificially intelligent cars. You also had Pryor's Place. Richard Pryor tells educational stories of his youth at a special urban neighborhood, which also stars the Sid and Marty Krofft puppets. All right. Next, we have ER. No, not that drama show from the 90s. We're talking about the ER short-lived sitcom that starred Elliot Gould, Conchita Ferrell, who you'll know is the housemaid from 2.5 Men, Mary McDonnell, Jason Alexander, and yes, starred in several episodes, George Clooney. Get this right. George Clooney starred in a comedy series, ER, before he moved to the drama series, ER. And next we have Miami Vice.
Never heard of it. Never heard of it.
Good. You shut your face. And we will round it out for a few more. We got Punky Brewster and the Transformers. And the last one in this group is Hunter. Woof. Some good stuff here, guys. Lacey, I'm going to start with you. What were some of your favorites of this group? Miami Vice, as she holds up. Is that the Blu-ray edition there?
This is the DVD. It's actually kind of it's a bummer. It's one of the ones where you slide it out and it's got all the discs are kind of in little sleeves. But it's the only thing that's available right now.
It is available on Blu-ray now, I think. Yeah.
Well, this is what I got when I got it.
Gotcha.
So this is what I have. It is. I want to say that the original didn't the film come out first, or did it? There was a film and then
came out first. Yeah.
Right.
It was a 2-hour movie premiere basically, and then later on they would split it up into 2 episodes. But it was a 2-hour movie premiere. Yeah.
Yes. I watched this as a kid growing up. It was great. It was Miami Vice. Then you'd have Riptide or some of that stuff afterwards. Simon and Simon. And it was great. It was super fun. And you watch it now, and it is so dated. So dated. Partially deliciously so, just for the wardrobe. Not many men can pull off the Sonny Crockett wardrobe.
Chandler did in Friends when they did their flashback.
Yes, and it was present in the Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore wedding singer, the boyfriend trying to be but yeah, so lots of interesting cameos, like first time or like early on. There's a ton of cameos that you look back and go, oh wow, okay, so that must have been one of his first roles or her first roles. Lots of fun people, lots of fun folks.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of different ones, but you scrolled through them, so I don't remember what else was up there.
Well, here I'll go. Let me start from the beginning here. We had Snorks and Pink Panther.
Snorks. That's what it was. Yeah, the Snorks, the Get Along Gang, and the Muppet Babies. Super, super, super fun on Saturday mornings. And then the next slide had Pryor's Place. Okay, so conversation about this. This was right after Richard Pryor kind of found Jesus. He found religion. He started doing. He had his OD, and he'd gotten clean. And this is after he did his the last special that he did, where it was supposed to be a comedy special, but he just stood there for 2 hours talking about getting sober, and people got really mad because it wasn't funny. But then he was like, okay, look, I'm clean now. I'm sober. I'm gonna go and
I think you're referring to the Live on the Sunset Strip one we covered last year.
Yeah.
He had to he did two recordings of that, and the first one didn't go well.
Right. So this is an interesting thing. I think it's kind of a precursor to Reading Rainbow, maybe,
or maybe Pee Wee Herman's, maybe.
I think probably a bit more of a precursor to Pee Wee's Playhouse than Reading.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Right on. I never saw it. I was reading about it the other day. I was like, oh wow, and who knew? So I did not recall this particular ER, but I do love everybody in there. I want to find it now.
Kyle, what about you? Your thoughts on this group?
Okay, so first I want to talk a little bit about some of the early cartoons that we showed with that. This was an interesting time thanks to some little blue guys who had a direct influence on what was happening with cartoons, because we had two phenomenons going on. Either Smurf ripoffs, aka the Snorks, or thanks to Muppet Babies and Muppets Take Manhattan, all of a sudden we had to come up with younger versions of popular characters, like the Pink Panther with his kids, Muppet Babies. The Get Along Gang was kind of its own standalone thing, but yeah, all of a sudden the Pink Panther had kids, so we got up that. And of course, Muppet Babies was a huge hit for CBS for a lot of years, so it definitely made its money. But let's roll forward a little bit here, Kevin. Pole Position. Go back. Pole Position, again, much like Mighty Orbots, animated by a Japanese studio, but they were taking early video game based show based off the idea of using the name from the popular Atari game at the time.
Apparently, this was not based on the video game from the research I was doing.
No, nowhere near based on the video game, but they wanted to take advantage of the name of the video game being so popular. Very catchy theme song. I tell anybody, go find the opening theme to Pole Position on YouTube. It's actually very catchy and well animated. Again, only lasted one season because, hey, it was really expensive to use the Japanese animators for Saturday morning cartoons. Pryor's Place, yes, Richard was coming out of sober, but if you ever watch everything, you have the Sid and Marty Krofft puppets in this, and really, we want to give Richard Pryor a children's show. There was a lot.
I thought that was
interesting.
I just want to mention, I don't remember Pole Position, but man, it felt like a show. It felt like a Kevin show. I would have watched.
Yeah, you would have loved it. Okay, I got to talk about ER because I was actually a fan of this show when it was coming out. I loved Elliot.
Please tell me you have a DVD copy or a VHS.
I can't find one. I can't find one. But I loved Elliot. This show introduced me to Elliot Gould. So there's that. It was a great cast. It was actually a fun comedy. Mary McDonnell in this as well. I remember several years later, it was a Christmas morning. I was still young enough to where you get up early and really excited about Christmas, and you're waiting for everybody to get up. And one of the channels was running an ER marathon, and I watched like several episodes before everybody else walked up. But this was actually a very quality show. Elliot Gould was phenomenal in it.
Can I ask you something? Can I ask you something here, Kyle? Because the description says a recently divorced Dr. Scheinfeld becomes an emergency room doctor in Chicago hospital, where he soon bonds with Dr. Eve Sheridan. Situational humor mixes with tense medical crisis. Do you remember the tense medical crisis part of the sitcom?
Well, at the time, I wouldn't say it was anything like a St. Elsewhere or an ER, but there were points where there was medical crisis too, but it played a little bit more on the comedy, lighthearted side. They weren't going into super massive life and death like ER type story, Michael Crichton ERs type storylines.
I just want to know where George Clooney's agent's going, hey, we got this medical drama ER here in the 90s. You interested? And he goes, what? I did a sitcom. Why? Because it's money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's Michael Crichton. It's Michael Crichton and money.
Yeah. I just wonder, like,
just to give you an example of history repeating itself, HBO has a new series coming out in 2025. It was under a different name, but now it's called The Pit because they moved it from Chicago to Pittsburgh. It was about an emergency room in Chicago. Now it's going to be an emergency room in ER. The star of this show won Noah Wiley.
There you go. So, Lacey, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, before this, hadn't he done mostly guest spots,
Well, he was on Facts of Life for a little while,
right? So I kind of feel like this would be a natural progression to try and get into something that's a little bit more dramatic.
What I don't know, what I'm flabbergasted by is I didn't know this show existed. And the fact that of all people on this show is George Clooney, and how that didn't become a bigger news thing anywhere at any time, going, hey, did you know there was a show that he was on also called ER? Anyway, I just thought that was fascinating. So I just want to take a minute on Miami Vice. This show is one of my top 5 shows of all time. Yes, I know it's horribly dated now. I don't care. I love it. Just, to me, it was the show that was the cop show that was more realistic than anything I had seen before, because sometimes the bad guys won at the end of the show. Sometimes they got away, and they weren't afraid to kill off people. They killed off, one of the cast members. Maybe more than one, but I know they killed off one of them. And it was just so cool and stylistic. But more importantly, it showcased music in better than anything I had seen before, and showcased just popular songs at the time, which made it difficult to re-release on DVD and Blu-ray later because of the rights, and they had to change some stuff. But to this day, Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight, every time I hear that damn song, I see these two guys getting ready with their guns in the black Ferrari Testarossa, getting ready to take on Calderon, don't know, and they don't quite trust each other yet. They're brand new partners. They both have pasts, just brilliantly done. And I've never seen a show replicate it the way they did, showcasing music the way they did.
Real quick on that, you mentioned the Phil Collins of it all. I mean, he was in several episodes. He's a recurring character as well. Yeah. But Kevin, I want to ask you this, because I think you and I, and Lacey, you too. Yes, we had events like Who Shot JR and stuff like that. But I truly believe Miami Vice, for people of our age, was the first true event television show with that you like with Sheena Easton guest appearances and just things that happened in Miami Vice. That was the first really true water cooler show of our generation. And first, I have to watch Miami Vice tonight.
Yeah, it was and the thing that surprised me too was that he starts off with the black Ferrari tester or Ferrari car, basically, and then like he's doing a deal for this arms deal, and he wants to know if the rocket works, and they blow up his freaking car. And I remember like Gene Simmons of Kiss being on the series. You had a young Al Bundy on there. I mean, it was destination TV. And it was edgy too, because we were at that age at the time, like, were we old enough to be watching some of this? Because it was like 10 o'clock at night, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I only got to watch that when I was at my grandparents' house in the summertime. So I only got to watch it when it was reruns. So I have no idea if I actually got to see them all during, when I was little, when I was a kid. But I definitely picked them up when it was, a little bit later.
Let's touch on Punky Brewster and Transformers here. I just remember Punky Brewster's adoptive dad was like, oh, he was the one in Police Academy? Okay. I did watch a show though from time to time, but Kyle, it's all about Transformers, man. What you got?
Well, I have got season 3 here and season 1, of course, on DVD from the original Rhino collections. This is season 3, but more importantly, you have to have season 1, which is, of course, Optimus Prime, Megatron, one of the 2 biggest toy lines from the 80s. Obviously, Transformers, G.I. Joe. You could probably throw a little He-Man in there as well. But Transformers and G.I. Joe changed everything. There's a lot. Most of it was in syndication. It wasn't really a Saturday morning cartoon, but it was either, for me, again, going back to WGN, their afternoon cartoon block, which I would record, which I think was probably the morning cartoon. With the time difference, was probably the morning cartoon block in Chicago, but I would record it. It was usually a combination of Transformers, G.I. Joe, Heathcliff, maybe some Brave Star, Ghostbusters, different things in there. But Transformers, G.I. Joe were probably, for boys, the two most defining toy lines of the 1980s. And I remember when they first came out, because they didn't come out on television at first. They came out on VHS.
Yeah.
Family Home Entertainment was the company. And you would
it was like $30 a pop for like a half-hour show or something crazy.
Yeah, or
like
more than that at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, Transformers has become, I think, probably in my honest opinion, the biggest franchise and longest lifespan of the 80s cartoons when you really truly think about it. It had a movie in 86 where they basically killed off the entire early toy line so they could introduce a whole new toy line. You've had multiple live action films. You've got a new animated film that just opened this weekend in Transformers 1, which people are raving about. But you talk to a lot of young boys, Optimus Prime was kind of their fill-in dad growing up too.
Yeah.
And that's what made, when the movie happened in 86 and they killed off Optimus Prime, the traumatic effect it had on young children, especially young male children who so looked up to Optimus Prime, made them change the G.I. Joe movie because they were going to kill off a main character of G.I. Joe that would have had a similar effect.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, say Transformers, I think it's easily one of the most recognizable things from the 1980s and probably one of the 2 or 3 of the most important cartoons to come out of the 1980s as
Agreed.
well.
Wow.
Guys, did you ever watch Hunter? I was aware of Hunter, but I never actually watched it. And it sounds like a show I obviously would have liked. Of course, we got Fred Dreyer, former, I think, Los Angeles Rams professional football player. He's a renegade cop who blends the rules and takes justice into his own hands. Partnered with the equally stunning and rebellious Sergeant McCall, he sets out to crack down on LA's slimiest criminals. Also co-starring Charles Hallahan. Lacey, did you watch Hunter?
I remember Hunter. I remember maybe seeing it a few times here or there. I remember being confused about how they spelled her name.
How so?
Stephanie Kramer.
Stephanie, you mean? Yeah. STEPFAIE.
Yeah. Like, yeah. That was obviously some agent somewhere was like, you got to be unique.
Yeah.
That's what that felt like.
Kyle, did you watch Hunter?
I watched Hunter because my dad was a huge fan of Hunter when it first came out. You had Hunter and Miami Vice going on NBC, and it was like police drama thing. Hunter actually became a very popular show. Fred Dreyer is probably more known for Hunter than he was his entire professional football. Football career. Yeah. I think it lasted several seasons too, and I mean it was a staple in the NBC primetime lineup for years. And if I remember correctly, like Miami Vice, it had its own hard edge to it. It wasn't like crimes they were dealing with in that show.
It lasted from 84 to 91, 152 episodes. So yeah, and because it had like a 10 p.m. like time slot, you knew it was like for older people and stuff. You can always tell. Okay, guys, the next group that we have here for television shows of 1984, we have Highway to Heaven, The Cosby Show, Who's the Boss, Cover Up, Hot Pursuit. And you're wondering, like, wait a minute, what's Hot Pursuit? I'll just tell you real quick. A young couple are fugitives pursued by both the law and a criminal assassin. We had Paper Dolls and Three's a Crowd, Finder of Lost Loves, It's Your Move, Partners in Crime, that co-starred Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson. And then we rounded out with Murder, She Wrote. So we got some interesting stuff to cover here. let's go with the obvious ones here. Highway to Heaven and Cosby Show. Let's just get this out of the way. Cosby Show, tainted now?
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes, which is an absolute crime because all the other actors on that should not be tainted for what Bill Cosby did because they were just as phenomenal as he was. Felicia Rashad, especially, was phenomenal on that show. And, you know, say what you will about the Cosby Show now in retrospect, it was a building block show and a true family show at the time that
everybody watched it 8 o'clock Thursday nights. It was family get to go to. And what's really interesting, Kyle, is that famous, I think it's first season where they do the whole family lip sync to that famous Ray Charles song.
Mm-hmm.
And you get little Rudy doing the high singing voice, and it was just laughing. I hear that song a lot on the radio station, satellite radio station for the company I work for. And I still can't, it just bugs me that Cosby now has tainted that show.
Well, it's not only that show. I mean, just to throw it out there real quick, I was a big fan of Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids growing up as a kid. Great show.
Yeah.
And that show is tainted, and that show had some great messages in it and great educational things that they won't put back out on the air because it's Bill Cosby.
Yeah. And you'll notice that you can't find pudding pops anymore.
Yeah. Well, DeJello basically cut that off immediately.
Yep.
But
Highway to Heaven, never watched it, never really wanted to watch it. I just remember Michael Landon from Little House on the Prairie, which wasn't a show I really got into, but it did quite well. A probationary angel sent back to Earth teams with an ex-cop to help people. Love the concept, just never got into it. You guys?
I'll just say real quick, and then because I know Lacey has some thoughts on Highway to Heaven. I remember watching the premiere because my mom was a huge Michael Landon fan, and it kind of just went to the wayside from there. Maybe a couple more episodes. Yeah, the concept was just to
Lacey.
Lacey.
Okay, with slight alterations, this is actually the same premise as Lucifer.
Truthfully, yes.
Well said. Well said.
No, I never got into like Highway to Heaven or Touched by an Angel or any of those. Not really a religion person.
These were the shows that your parents watched for us at a certain age. And so, next is Who's the Boss? Okay. Before we get to Cover Up because of the stuff that happened there, let's talk about Who's the Boss. Watched it all the time. Alyssa Milano, crush. Great chemistry with everyone. It was a great sitcom. Tony Danza was awesome. Lacey, your thoughts on Who's the Boss?
Mona was awesome.
Mona, yes.
Fun. Well, I mean, come on. Who didn't grow up with Who's the Boss? I mean, Who's the Boss is, it was, I came home from school, wanted to watch it immediately. I would always get my homework done immediately so I could watch Who's the Boss that day. Yeah, definitely.
Kyle?
Big one.
Of course, Tony Danza spinning out of Taxi for his own show. There was a point where this show was so popular, Tony Danza was giving Bill Cosby a run for his money. This show was that popular. Obviously, Alyssa Milano, looking back on it, Judith Light. One of the more, truthfully, a very progressive show when you think about it, even at the time of the 80s with the concept behind it. So, but
you basically had a male housekeeper, basically. Yeah. And moving his daughter in with Judith Light's family and stuff. So good stuff.
But Cover Up, Kevin.
Let me lead into this here. So Cover Up is an interesting story. It's tragedy because of the stars that were starting in this, and the concept is basically a fashion photographer and a veteran special forces soldier posing as her model go on intelligence missions around the world. Stars Jennifer O'Neill, Richard Anderson, John Eric Hexum, and Michael T. Williamson. Now, this show's more famous, unfortunately, because John Eric Hexum accidentally killed himself with a loaded prop gun, and then was replaced by Richard Anderson, who passed away a few years in 91 due to AIDS, I remember correctly. And I was reading up too, Jennifer O'Neill also got hurt with a prop gun, but she survived it. So it's got this unfortunate negative cloud over it. And it would have been interesting because the concept is really cool, Kyle. of the fashion photographer and the special forces thing. But unfortunately, we lost John Eric Hexum because of this.
Yeah. So I actually really enjoyed the concept of this show too. I was a John Eric Hexum fan from his time doing Voyagers, which was canceled way before its time, and I think if it would come out now, it would be a successful show. Jennifer O'Neill was stunning on this show. She was drop dead gorgeous, and like you said, the concept was really good. The show lost a little bit of its magic after John Eric Hexum's tragedy happened. It kind of just had that stigma to it. And this show, a lot of people consider it one of those shows that was just cursed. I mean, there's more than one story besides what happened to John Eric Hexum and Jennifer O'Neill of just weird stuff happening on the set of this show. It actually lasted longer than a lot of people thought it would because they didn't think they would continue after what happened initially. But they decided to. I think it lasted 2, maybe 3 seasons on.
No, it was 21 episodes.
Okay.
Lasted total. Yeah.
John Eric Hexum had 6.
Yeah, 6 or it was actually 7, and then was it Richard Anderson came in to finish it? So yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Interesting. This one I did not. Oh, sorry, Lacey. Go ahead.
So I also watched this because of Voyagers, where he was with Mino Bellucci, who, by the way, is Punky Brewster's brother.
Oh, wow.
That's weird, right? But it should come back, and it should. I think this would be something that could go today. I think this could be something that
I do like the concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hot Pursuit, I had no idea, but I know they've released I think the first couple episodes as a movie in other countries. A young couple are fugitive pursued by both the law and criminal assassin, starring Carrie Keane, I believe, of Goonies. Is that same Carrie? I don't remember. Or maybe it was another person. Yeah, no, different actor. Sorry. Eric Pierpoint. What?
It was Carrie Green.
Carrie Green. Thank you. Eric Pierpoint and Dina Morell. Mike Preston I've seen in a lot of films. I think he plays the villain here.
He was actually in Highlander an episode of Highlander.
You're right. That's why I remember him. Thank you, Kyle.
He played Terrence Kincaid in Highlander.
Yes, there you go. And then we had Finders of Lost Love. Carrie Maxwell is a private investigator and owner of Maxwell Unlimited, where they specialize in helping people find their lost loves. Each week, Maxwell, along with Daisy Lloyd and Rita Hargrove, manage to help yet another heartbroken person reunite with someone from their past. I can see where things might get a little weird when someone actually wants to stalk someone in a negative way and they ask for their help. So I'm wondering if that was a plot point in one of their episodes. I'd never heard of this show.
Is that the same guy that was in Glitter? Like, if you look at the posters for Glitter and then it looks like the same guy.
It does.
Right?
The
Maybe
Glitter.
a little bit.
Let me look. I'm looking.
It could just be a case of the 80s all men, like the style made people look similar.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they had that gray kind of like they did the salt and pepper kind of thing, and they had the.
So here's interesting thing here, guys. So next we have Paper Dolls. Okay, the cutthroat world of modeling and cosmetics. Storyline centered around acid tongue modeling executives Racine, who held fife over the careers of young models Lori Caswell and Taryn Blake, and cosmetics tycoon Grant Harper. Stars Lloyd Bridges, Dak Rambo, Mimi Rogers, Morgan Fairchild, Nicolette Sheridan, Terry Farrell, and also Star Trek alum Jonathan Frakes had roles. Terry Farrell, of course, from Deep Space Nine. Paper Dolls. I vaguely remember the show. If you look at the picture here, that's Terry Farrell on the right, with Morgan Fairchild there in the middle. And then
Nicolette Sheridan on the left.
What's that?
That's Nicolette Sheridan on the left.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then Three's a Crowd. Jack Tripper's cohabitation with his wife, Vicky Bradford, is complicated by her hostile father's interference as Jack's landlord, of course, starring John Ritter, Mary Carteret, and Robert Mandan. Now, what's really interesting about this, guys, it's going to come up in a little bit here, but Three's the Crowd debuted the week after Three's Company ended their final episode of their final season. There you go. And Kyle, it's your move. We love this show. We've talked about it.
Is that a Baby Bateman right there?
That is a Baby Bateman with David Garrison, otherwise known as She was in the first several seasons of Married with Children. He was the husband of what's her name? The annoying.
The one he left the show and got like under really weird circumstances. And
yeah. And then Karen Kay was the wife. Matt Burton, you may have met his match when his widowed mother begins dating their new neighbor Norman, who's wise to Matt's schemes and attempts to foil every one of them, hoping to set his would-be stepson on straight and narrow. Basically, you got Jason Bateman just burning it, meaning like he was like killing the show. He was so funny, always trying to get into trouble. And it was him and his new stepfather, Kyle, basically going at each other, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing about as good as Bateman is in this, is it this or is it Hogan's Family that really put him on the map? That's always been kind of the debate.
Well, Hogan's Family, he definitely like was hitting it, but this really was because you saw him in early episodes of Silver Spoons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this was like his show, basically. You know, he was the star of this.
What I always find interesting is when you look back at this time, people saw him as Justine Bateman's little brother. Now, now he is by far the bigger star than Justine is.
Yeah. And by the way, Three's a Crowd only lasted one season. Unfortunately, did not last long at all. Yeah.
When did Teen Wolf 2 come out?
I don't know why.
I want to say 88, 89, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like where his star was going. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't recognize this at all. I saw him and I was like, what?
I loved it.
His little cheeks, his little chubby cheeks. He's so little.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kevin, the big question though is between Paper Dolls and Partners in Crime, how many young men were introduced to certain aspects of their life between those two shows with the women in those shows?
I don't remember Partners in Crime, but I wish I would have, because okay, so here it is. When their ex-husband Raymond winds up murdered, Carol and Sydney set out to find his killer and eventually decide to run a detective agency Raymond has left them. So you got Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson teaming up to solve crime. How did I not remember this?
I've seen that show.
And
I didn't recognize the name, but when you said that, I was like, "Oh, I've seen that."
I mean, come on! You have Wonder Woman and Jennifer from WKRP working together. I mean, what more do you need?
That's really not something that I would have clocked at the time. Like that.
Yeah, it was unfortunately canceled after 13 episodes. It did not last long. So yeah,
they should do it today with Megan Mullally and Goldie Hawn.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
Okay, and then of course Murder, She Wrote. I didn't watch the show. I know how popular it was, but yeah, you got to give some love to Murder, She Wrote here. So, yeah. Oh, look what has Lacey got there.
What Lacey has is actually something that they would use in an episode of Murder, She Wrote as a murder weapon, because it's probably
as a murder weapon.
Heavy.
Yes, I believe the area was the name of the city, the town was Cabot Cove or Cabot. Yeah. Okay. And realistically, with 256 episodes or 264 episodes or something, it makes sense that there was an article that came out not too long ago saying that it was the deadliest television city, the deadliest city on television, because it was this tiny place and there was a murder every week. So 12 seasons.
I've heard that about Psych too, of my hometown Santa Barbara,
right?
and stuff.
Yep,
Definitely.
But Murder, She Wrote has 12 seasons, and back then they would do 26, 28 episodes a season.
Yeah, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Okay, guys. So I want to ask the question. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we still got some movies to get to here. Was September of 1984 one of the most important months of television debuts? Kyle.
I'm going to say yes, because of the animated side of it. That was some of the biggest animated shows at the time, and even the ones that didn't last long are memorable because of the ridiculousness of them, and they are things that people remember to this day. Most people couldn't say, "Oh yeah, I watched Turbo Team," but then they hear the concept of it and they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that concept," or like, "No, but I got to go find it because that concept is so ridiculous." But you're talking Voltron, you're talking Muppet Babies, you're talking Transformers, you're even talking Snorks, which actually was popular even as a Smurf spinoff for NBC. I think as far as the Saturday morning cartoon fair, it was staple shows for a lot of people, especially of our age. And then obviously you add in Miami Vice, one of the all-time most influential shows on television. Yeah, I don't know if it's the greatest, but it's right up there in the top 2 or 3.
Lacey?
Maybe. I think this, and then include like the next month, maybe next couple of months, because back then you had things that would premiere in September. Then you'd have.
I can tell you right now that nothing compares to this September when we start coming to October, November, because I've seen my notes.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Unless you want to compare it to like another year, which I don't have those notes for, like 85 or 86. But
I feel like as far as like classic TV, sure, there's a lot of stuff that still is very popular. I don't know that a lot of it holds up still. But I do think that I think 82 you had so many of like the automotive shows, like all you had Knight Rider, you had Stingray, you had all Cobra, and I think that was also a really big year because I think that was all
A-Team,
yeah. I think that was like 81, 82. I can't remember.
Kyle, you're burning to say something. What?
There's one caveat to this too, that because it's shortly after this we start getting cable television shows. You get shows on HBO, we get shows on USA Network. So it started changing in some ways the dynamic of network television within a few years of this year. So this is probably, I'm going to say this is probably the last true classic month of television premiere via networks.
That's fair.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the most influential television debut months of all time. It's a bunch of these are just bangers, and they're so rewatchable. A lot for the sitcoms and then the dramas that came in there. Even the ones that I didn't watch that I still can't count out. That lasted so long. I obviously, like I said, I didn't watch Murder, She Wrote, but I know how popular and how long that went on. It's just you got to put all that in there. So. I think it is definitely, if not top, definitely in the top 3. So, all right. So real quick, we're going to go to the stuff that was actually ending in September of 1984. We had Monchi Cheese, Little Rascals cartoon, Pac-Man cartoon, the Richie Rich cartoon, the Rubik's Cube cartoon, the Littles cartoon, and Jennifer Slept Here. I didn't realize that this was a show that I thought was kind of interesting. Real quick, it was who was it? Ann Jillian basically played a ghost, and people were living in her new house, and she was a character in it. And then the Flintstone Funnies. And then we had, of course, as I mentioned, Three's Company finally ending its run, and Happy Days, after a very, very long run, finally ended.
Wow.
After 11 seasons. Happy Days ended. So
look at Ron Howard's mustache.
I know.
And his hairline. You look at the original where he was like, supposed to be playing 15.
He came back for this picture in this TV guide thing here because remember he left the series for a while.
Yeah,
he left him at the end.
Yeah,
but he did come back for obviously the reunion and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of people were coming in. And by the way, I don't know if you see that there's a certain blonde-haired guy that likes to come in on shows when they're ending. Kyle.
Yeah,
McGinley.
Ted McGinley. There he is. Yes, always showing up.
So he popped into Married with Children right at its peak.
Yeah, I thought he was great in Married with Children.
Yeah.
And as we Kyle, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say too, this television year, you had the birth of all these new shows, and you really felt like you had the end of a major television era happening in the same year. So I think that's a very interesting aspect.
And we do mention the top 30 shows that were happening, of course, at the top. As we mentioned here, of course, right away. We had, of course, Murder, She Wrote just blew up this year and was one of the top rated, number 8, basically. And then at number 7 was Simon and Simon. So there you go. I love
was my favorite.
Right. I love showing the old TV guides here as well.
Real quick, Lacey, you had the whole murder. How many CBS shows did Angela Lansbury's character actually cross over into?
Oh gosh, so many. Like she every 3 weeks she was in a different crossover.
I mean, didn't they eventually even cross her over in a Matlock episode?
I don't think it was Matlock. I think it was diagnosed as murder.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, diagnosed as murder. That's right.
This is the Fandom. Okay.
Sorry.
Got to go to the next one, guys. We got a lot to get into. Fandom Podcast Network, guys, you are listening to and watching here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, these are the movies of 1984. And that is our next segment. Interesting movie news here, of course, in September of 22nd. Michael Eisner leaves Paramount Pictures to become head of Walt Disney Productions, while Frank Wells became chief operating officer and Jeffrey Katzenberg was later named chairman. Then stuff happens later in the future that makes it really interesting. So there you go.
Just a whole piece of history for Disney that is an era that some people would much soon forget if they could.
We do have celebrity film debuts. We like to throw a few at a time. In 1984, we had Lou Diamond Phillips in Interface, Aidan Quinn in Reckless, Tim Robbins in Toy Soldiers. No, not that Toy Soldiers.
Not the good one. Not the good one, Kevin.
Which we will get to later, yes. And then Tim Roth in The Hit. But let's get into the movies here, guys. We got some interesting ones. And to start off was a movie I did not hear about. Kyle, you did. This is The Brother from Another Planet. Came out September 7th. Made about $3,700,000 in its theatrical run. He's not just another out-of-towner. The Brother from Another Planet. New film by John Sayles. A mutant alien with the appearance of a black human is chased by outer space bounty hunters through the streets of Harlem. The brother is an alien who has crash landed on Earth in New York City. While mute, strongly empathetic, and able to fix things, he resembles a black man with strange feet. His attempt to make place for himself in Harlem is an allegory of the immigrant experience in the United States. Meanwhile, two bounty hunters from the brother's home planet arrive and try to capture him. Directed by John Sayles, written by John Sayles, stars Joe Morton as the alien, Daryl Edwards, Rosanna Carter, and one of my favorites from the 80s, and I miss him dearly, died too young, Mr. Steve James. Kyle, Brother from Another Planet. You knew this movie. I did not.
Oh, I have known about this movie for a very long time. Actually, this is the movie that introduced me to Joe Morton. I am a big Joe Morton fan. Loved him in Terminator. Loved him in the show Eureka. Think he is a very underrated actor. This is one of those benefits of living in Alaska where they sometimes just send us boxes of whatever the hell they want to for us to put on the rental counter. This would happen to be one of those times. And actually what sold me on it was seeing Steve James was in it because I was a huge Steve James fan too. So I'm like, oh, okay, we'll watch. We got together one night, a bunch of us watched this. Love it. It's crazy. It's bizarre. It's B-movie camp, but it's fun. And it's Morton's great in it. Some of the concepts they introduce in it are just so out there. They're hilarious. It's one of those it is truly a cult classic. And if you have not seen this and you are a fan of Joe Morton or aware of who Joe Morton is, go find this. It's worth it.
He is great. Lacey, are you familiar with this movie?
I am. I wasn't, but like Kyle was saying, I love Joe Morton in Eureka, and at one point, I'm kind of a backlog nerd, so I started going back through everything he'd done, and I kind of started going backwards, and I got to this. I was like, "What? Okay, let's give it a shot." It was really fun.
Yeah, I watched it on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube because I was trying to find it for free, and there's a couple of different quality ones, and so make sure you check it out. Kyle, as you know, I'm a huge Steve James fan, and he plays the bar owner in this. And I just, we may have to do like a Time Warp special just on Steve James movies because he needs to be remembered. People need to know who he is if they don't. Not only that, dude, he's a freaking great actor in this, and he's a great actor. He outshined Michael Dudikoff in all the American Ninja films that he did because he can actually act and fight. He was great. John Sayles financed most of this movie himself, according to Wikipedia. Sayles described this movie as being about the immigrant experience of assimilation. He spent part of the MacArthur Fellows Genius Grant on the film, which cost $350,000 to produce. The film grossed over 10 times its production cost in its first weekend of full release. I recommend you go on YouTube, and there's an interview with John Sayles talking about his experience in this. Kyle.
I just have a quick hot take about Steve James. If Steve James had lived and had been healthy, Wesley Snipes might not have been Blade.
That's a good point. Unfortunately, Steve James, I believe he died of pancreatic cancer or some type of
cancer. Way too young.
Yeah, early 90s passed away. But yeah, Steve James, I think would have been a huge, huge star if he had lived. Just missed that guy. All right. Next film we have here, guys, is David Carradine in The Warrior and the Princess. And I'm holding up a DVD copy right here. Now, there's something interesting about this DVD copy I never noticed before. Just going to kind of zoom in right there because I'm going to get to
the top Total Recall.
Yes, Kyle, you're going to get to some trivia about this in a second. Theatrical release made almost $3 million in the theater run. The mighty warrior Cain crosses the barren wastelands of the planet Ura, where two arch enemies, Zeg and the evil degenerate Balkaz, fight incessantly for control of the village's only well. Cain sees his opportunity and announces that his sword is for hire, but his eyes stay clearly on the beautiful captive sorceress Naja and his newly awakened purpose. Director John C. Bodrick stars David Carradine, Luke Askew, Maria Sokas, and friend of the show, Anthony DeLongis. Of course, we recently had him on the network this year because he co-starred as one of the villains in Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, accomplished martial artist, excellent actor, and I've had the privilege of actually training under him with his bullwhip and several other things. I've actually visited his ranch. Anthony DeLongis is awesome in this. He plays a great bad guy and does some awesome sword work in this. So, Kyle, give us some trivia first.
Okay, well, since the first trivia is Anthony DeLongis, I just want to throw in too, if you are not quite familiar with Anthony DeLongis, most of you have out there probably seen Batman Returns. He is the one who taught Michelle Pfeiffer the whip in Batman.
The whip, yes, accomplished whip expert Anthony DeLongis.
Yeah. One of probably the only man I would trust to use a bullwhip around me, to be honest with you. But speaking of Anthony DeLongis, he would later star in another sword and sorcery themed science fiction fantasy film, a little thing called Masters of the Universe in 1987. The plot of this movie is similar to A Fistful of Dollars. The same plot was used in Last Man Standing in 1996. All three films are reimagining of the classic Japanese film Yojimbo. And unlike much bigger budget movies such as Total Recall or Good Luck Chuck, this movie features a woman with anatomically correct multiple breasts. In this case, 4. Arnold, I'm disappointed in you. You should have went with 5 in Total Recall because you have to be the king.
I did not know that about this movie. I had not seen this movie until recently when I watched it on DVD. And there's a lot of nudity in this movie. But there is a dance sequence with this. And you can see on the DVD that the woman here has 4 breasts. And I didn't notice that when I put the DVD in the machine. But there's a very seductive scene where she is dancing. And I don't know if they took molds of her top 2 and then just made fake ones to put underneath, and it was interesting. And by the way, Last Man Standing, 1996, that's the Bruce Willis film. It takes place in Prohibition, 1930s. Excellent action film. I think done a lot better with that same style where he works both sides against each other and makes a bunch of money and then stuff kind of backfires. This is a lot of sword and sorcery. There's some weird creatures in this as well. Very cheesy, filmed in South America somewhere. Anyone seen this?
No, but the last time I saw David, he was not that built. He was wearing a Stars and Stripes like Speedo plum smuggler, and he had a little.
Did you just say plum smuggler?
Yeah, like a little Speedo bathing suit.
Yeah, okay, just
like whatever.
Well, he wears this cloak, but the outfit that he wears, he does wear like, what you would call a plum smuggler, but he doesn't show it all the time, but he is in shape, but not like the cover of this, drawn,
Got it.
DVD cover. Kyle, did you see this?
I have not actually seen this film, but I just got to say this too. The great thing about the 80s from about 1981 through about 87, I call it the Clash of the Titans effect. Hollywood got this thing where we've got to put out so many fantasy movies a year because we're going to find one that clicks. Conan was a big effect on this too, and things like this. We need these swords and sorcery movies, and it birthed some of the craziest films of a generation. I mean, the sword. Kevin, I would say maybe until about 87. That run from about 81 to 87 was probably that.
Sword and sorcery. and then straight to video if it didn't do well in the theaters.
Yeah. You had the Barbarian Brothers come out around this time, I believe.
But also too, and this is what I miss about this, and you gave me an awesome book for a present a while back, is these posters that were hand drawn. And you would see a lot of straight to video versions of this. And this is definitely one of those, like if you see it on the video rental place, you're like, oh, it's interesting. What's going on with that girl there? So yeah. Okay. I'm going to touch in another film here. We got the next couple of films you always saw at the video rental store, Kyle. And of course, we recently touched last episode, we touched on Chud. Every video store had to have Chud, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the next two also had to have them. And the next one I'm speaking of is Exterminator 2.
Was there Exterminator 1?
Yes, there was. But Exterminator 2 was the one that got most of the play and had the more interesting cover. You got a guy basically using a flamethrower, vengeance type thing going on. So the flamethrower wielding vigilante John Eastland returns to rid New York City of the drug lord and his gang. Now, Kyle, I went and watched the first one because I don't remember seeing it. You remember? You want to guess who was in one?
I could honestly. It's been I know
Steve James was in one. Steve
That's right.
James was in Exterminator 1, basically.
Yeah.
Robert Ginty plays the Exterminator guy. Mario Van Peebles in the second one is the villain. And Frankie Faison, who you've seen as a character actor in a lot of these films. Lacey, you had a question?
Was the lead character Spanish?
No. Robert Ginty was a white American male.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out why they spelled Exterminator with a D.
That's a good question.
Like D-O-R, D sometimes in Latin, D replaces the T, but I'm
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
No, I do have an answer for that, Kevin.
Oh, okay. Kyle does.
It's called, this movie was made by Canon Films, and Canon Films would always market for intentionally for multicultural.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
Makes sense.
I mean, if you see the Canon Films icon on any film, you can just throw out any logic and whatever because they just did whatever the hell they wanted to because they felt like it.
All right.
This was during the time of, Terminator was coming out in the next couple of months, and it was vengeance movies were a big deal, and every movie theater every VHS rental store had Exterminator 2. Couldn't find Exterminator 1, but Exterminator 2 was there. And I just remember seeing it all the time. And it took place in New York. It was filmed in New York. Kyle, you mentioned Canon Group. I think there's some trivia about that.
Yeah. The Canon Group, Inc. wasn't pleased with the writer and director Mark Buntsman's original cut of the film, so they had noted film doctor William Sachs do extensive reshoots in Los Angeles to make the movie better. Of note, Canon Films probably had that man on speed dial. I'm just saying. Also, a garbage truck from New York City had to be driven across country to Los Angeles for reshoots because New York City garbage trucks are made out of steel, while the ones from Los Angeles are made out of fiberglass. Not shockingly, Mario Van Peebles came up with all the costumes he wore in the film. Scenes in which John wears a fireproof mask and burns down gang members with a flamethrower were not in the original cut of the film. They were added during reshoots and were filmed with the stunt double of Robert Ginty. Okay, Kevin, I just have a quick question for you on this too.
Yes.
Is Robert Ginty one of those true that guy actors? You might not know who he is, but you recognize him as soon as you see him. Yeah, definitely. And when we saw Highlander 3, where Mario Van Peebles was the villain, we always thought that, he just took the Kurgan from Highlander 1986 and tried to copy it. No. He basically took this character that he did because he was the main villain in this and then just turned it up to 10. I just gotta say that. It's 100, not a 10, 100.
Yeah. Okay, guys. The next one is a cult classic. And if you're a Ninja fan, you've probably seen this. And it is Ninja III The Domination. She's the ultimate killer. She's the perfect weapon. The body of a sexy aerobics instructor is invaded by the evil spirit of a dying ninja. At first, changes in her behavior is limited to having strange interactions with an arcade game, doing sexy things with V8 juice, and being attracted to an unusually hairy police officer. But soon enough, she is systematically killing ninja style. The officers responsible for the ninja's death can only be stopped by another ninja. Director Sam Furstenberg, who of course directed the American Ninja films, stars Sho Kosugi, Lucinda Dickey, Jordan Bennett, and James Hong. Now, I got to show you guys something. I picked up an action pack of DVDs. Death Wish 2, Mission in Action, Cyborg, Chuck Norris and Invasion USA, Chuck Norris, Missing in Action 2, The Beginning, Chuck Norris, Braddock, Missing in Action 3, and Exterminator 2 and Ninja 3 Domination, all on this action pack here. The DVD that I'm holding up here. Another film, Kyle, that was in all of the the VHS rentals there.
Okay.
And I did want to mention that I watched an interview with a current interview, I would say within like the last 5 or 6 years, of star Lucinda Dickey. And keep in mind, she just recently starred in the first Break-In movie as well. And then this movie comes out. Kyle, Ninja 3, The Domination. What you got?
Okay. Before I get into trivia, I just want to expand. You talked about it being on video source. No, Kevin. Let's be truthful about this. It wasn't that Ninja 3 The Domination was at every video rental store. It was every video rental store must have a section of ninja films. Because there was enough there to make a section of ninja films.
Yeah. And
we can thank, again, our good friends at Canon Films for that. Because, Kevin, hold up that DVD again real quick. All of the films on that action pack are Canon Films, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, they are. Look at that.
Canon Films was the king of 80s cheese action films. There's not even a question about it. There's a great documentary out there on Canon Films. If you're a cinema buff, I highly recommend you go watch it. I just had to get that out before I went into block.
All right, stay on target, Kyle.
So, but I do have some trivia here because Sho Kosugi is an actual Ninpo practitioner. He was also the movie's technical advisor and fight choreographer. Kosugi starred in numerous other 1980s ninjas movies and appeared in each of the films in the Golden Globulus Canon Ninja series, but playing different characters. Sho Kosugi came up with the idea for his character to wear an eye patch. This was the first film of a 5-picture deal for Lucinda Dickey, who Minham Golan wanted to make her a star very badly. The other films in the deal included Break-In, Break-In 2, Electric Boogaloo, Breaking 3, which was planned but fell apart, King Solomon's Mines, and its sequel, Alan Quartermain and the Lost City of Gold. The latter 3 films didn't happen for her because she felt that both she and Canon Films were totally tired of each other at that point.
Enter Sharon Stone.
Yeah, exactly. She probably, in ways, she may have made the right decision, but that's a whole other conversation. Director Sam Furstenberg considered the film to be quite a failure for many reasons. The first being the fact that no fan of the first 2 ninja films would buy Lucinda Dickey as a ninja and a female hero. The second was the mismatch of Flashdance, The Exorcist, and a regular ninja movie that didn't gel at all. Lastly, the whole ninja concept would have to be refashioned, and eventually they came up with American Ninja in 1985, a year later, which was also directed by Furstenberg and starred the one and only Michael Dudikoff.
And Steve James.
Yes, and Steve James.
Lacee, your thoughts? Have you seen the ninja film?
I have no thoughts. I have all kinds of thoughts, but none of them actually pertain to the movies.
Okay. So you haven't seen it.
It's just it took me a second to figure out when you said she had started. I was like, wait, that's Special K? How? It's only been a year. How'd she get that long hair?
I just want to mention so she actually filmed Ninja 3 Domination first. I watched a recent interview with her on YouTube, and she talked about her experience. So she films Ninja 3 Domination. She films the ending scene where she ends up killing the main bad guy, right? Mm-hmm. Then she goes out and films Break-In right? Here, I got the
Mhm,
Breaking
mhm.
DVD right here, right? So
Yep.
she cuts her hair for it, right?
Yeah.
And then she's asked to come back for reshoots, and they have to put on a bad wig for her to finish it, and they redo it. And what's funny too is when Ninja 3 Domination came out, she says like there was crickets. No one cared about it. But now it's become a cult classic, and she gets a lot of convention appearances but she had stopped acting to raise a family basically. And now she's like making appearances, and there's people that love to see her and get autographs and pictures with her because of this film. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
So, yeah. Okay, moving along, guys. Soldier Story. This made about $22 million. I didn't remember this movie at all. And basically, it is an African-American officer investigates a murder in a racially charged situation in World War II. A black soldier is killed while returning to his base in the Deep South. The white people of the area are suspected at first. A tough black army attorney is brought in to find out the truth. You find out a little bit more about the dead soldier in flashbacks. Director Norman Jewison stars Howard E. Rollins Jr. and David Allen Greer, Denzel Washington in the early role for him, Patti LaBelle, and Wings Hauser. I had never seen this film or heard of it. I tried to find it free on YouTube, only portions of the film. This movie looks heavy. Definitely deals with a lot of racism, unfortunately, that happened during World War II. And through, obviously it's probably a callback to a lot of other things that happened. Have you guys seen this film, Kyle?
I think I've seen it once, but I think it was watched it on HBO at one point because it was Denzel, but it really didn't stick out that much for me, other than it being a very early film, early in Denzel's career before he was really Denzel.
What about you, Lacey?
Yeah, it kind of felt like oh, now I just lost the movie. What's the one with Dennis Quaid as the presumed innocent? No, he's in the military. It's kind of like a combination of Officer and Gentleman and the Dennis Quaid one that I'm thinking of.
Presumed innocent is Harrison Ford.
Yeah, it's the wrong. I'll figure it out.
Anyway, have you seen this?
I have seen it. It's you're correct. It's heavy. It's not something that I would purchase because I don't know why I saw it in the first place. I think it was just like on, and I was doing homework or something. I didn't.
Cool.
It's not the most uplifting film.
Yeah, I did some of the scenes I was watching on YouTube. I'm like, holy cow, this looks hard. But apparently, it's garnered a lot of interest because it's one of Denzel Washington's earlier films, and he's really good in the scenes that I saw. He just, as usual, he just kills it. So yeah. All right, guys, this one we've heard of. This is Amadeus, September 19th, made over $51 million. The life, success, and troubles of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, as told by Antonio Salieri, the contemporaneous composer who was deeply jealous of Mozart's talent and claimed to have murdered him. Directed by Milos Forman, and of course stars F. Murray Abraham, Tom Hulce, Elizabeth Berridge. Kyle, start us off with a little bit of trivia.
When shooting the scene in which Salieri is writing down the death mass under Mozart's dictation, Tom Hulce was deliberately skipping lines to confuse F. Murray Abraham in order to achieve the impression that Salieri wasn't able to fully understand the music being dictated. The film ironically helped spark a revival of Salieri's music, which had previously languished in obscurity. Several professors of music stated after studying all the musical keys struck on pianos throughout the film that not one key is struck incorrectly when compared to what is heard at the exact same moment. In other words, what you see is exactly what you hear. And finally, Milos Forman insisted that his lead actors retain their American accents so that they could concentrate on their characters and performance instead.
All right. Lacey, let's start with you. What's your thoughts on Amadeus?
Fantastic movie. Tom Hulce is a genius. Milos Forman is amazing. F. Murray, like everyone in this movie is perfect. I believe I want to say Tom Hulce was up for an Oscar. I think F. Murray Abraham might have actually won.
Yeah, Murray did.
He did. Yeah, it's an amazing movie.
He also got called out in Last Action Hero as the guy who killed Mozart.
Yeah. Well, Salieri, he was a contemporary of Mozart, but apparently they kind of was kind of an argument for who would get venues and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Like in real life.
Kyle, your thoughts on Amadeus?
Amadeus is one of those films that it's like this. It's its own little box. It's like this blip on the history radar. Yet it wins Best Picture. Tom Hanks has this one amazing performance, but really kind of is not heard from much afterwards. Either I was looking at his IMDb, not a lot of things I recognize. It's just like everything came together to make this one perfect film, and then that was it. And it was just. It's an interesting experience. I know Norman, our good friend Norman, is a big fan of this movie as well, Kevin. And obviously you had the song that came out around the same time, the Amadeus song. Or did you say Dr. Zayas, Kevin? Was it Dr. Zayas? Quote home. But it's just one of those weird, excellent movies, but it's just got in its own little box in Hollywood history.
Lacey.
Yes.
Why do you think we haven't heard from Tom Hanks?
I mean, I think that he did really, really well for a while. He was in a movie. Gosh, now I can't remember the name of it. He played first. I mean, he was one of the leads in Animal House, so that's kind of a thing. But he was in this movie where he played the personal film. Projectionist for Stalin. And I can't remember the name of it, but it was fantastic. With Linda Fiorentino, maybe. That's a maybe. But I think he's done a lot of stuff. I think that after Animal House, he was kind of in a couple of, kind of like bawdy comedy kind of things. And then once he got this, everybody was like, oh, wow, but I think that he started choosing films that were something that meant something to him. And maybe he just sort of went to, more independent stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out before I watched this because I saw this years and years and years ago. And I don't remember why I didn't revisit it. And I found it used on DVD and I knew I was going to cover it. So I picked it up and I watched it. Mm-hmm. Got a hot take here, guys.
Ooh.
Remember in the movie Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey says, "You want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?" Well, for me, the most annoying sound of the world is Tom's laughing in this movie.
Yeah, that's up there.
I mean, it's deliberate, but yeah.
I get it, but did it bug the F out of me. And I got to tell you, for me, I thought he was the weak link of the film. I think this movie would have been better if someone else was cast in it. I don't know why. Maybe there's some history behind it, but him laughing, I know people will do that as a nervous tick, and I get that. But this movie to me is highly overrated. I didn't enjoy this film because of him. F. Murray Abraham was fantastic in this movie. The surrounding cast was fantastic in this movie. But Tom, can't stand him. Ruined the movie for me. And I do not find this movie rewatchable because of that reason. I might be in the minority because of that, but now I remember why I didn't go back and revisit it, because I find him extremely annoying, and that laugh did not help.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yep, that's my hot take. All right, guys, the next film we've got is All of Me. September 21st, it came out, made over $35 million. And I love it. The posters tell you the plot, and I'm going to show you the plot here, but let's look at Lacey's little DVD here. I love this. Check this out. There you go. Yes, All of Me. Yay. All right. They say that behind every great man, there's a woman, but in this case, it's ridiculous. When rich, eccentric Edwina Cutwater died, a crazy guru tried to transport her soul into the body of a beautiful young woman. But the guru goofed, and Edwina's soul has accidentally taken over the entire right side of her lawyer, Roger Cobb. He still controls what's left. Now Edwina and Roger are living together in the same body. He's losing his job. He's losing his girlfriend. And he just can't seem to get her out of his system. No matter how hard he tries, That's on the poster. I love it. Lacey, I know this is one of your favorites. You've been wanting to talk about this, of course, starring Steve Martin, Lily Tomlin, Victoria Tennant, a Carl Reiner film.
Yes.
Let's cook.
This might be my favorite Steve Martin movie.
Ah, nice. Okay.
I gotta tell you, there's something about watching Steve Martin pretend that half of his body is controlled by one person and half of his body is controlled by another person when he is literally learning how to walk. And then the left side of his hand is very, very exaggerately feminine.
And the driving scenes too.
And, oh my gosh. And of course, because the person that he's inhabited by, I guess, is someone was kind of sick and bedbound for her entire life and has only ever, been taken places in limousines because she's like uber wealthy. She has no concept of anything, right? And she doesn't have, it's like, she doesn't understand what anything is. So she's never done anything. So just watching him, just this whole right side, so dramatic, and it's fantastic. Not to mention when he starts hooking up with the other Victoria Tennant, and all of a sudden he's like, "I'll be right back." And he goes to the bathroom mirror and he's talking to her. He's like, "Stop putting pictures of Clark Gable in my head. You're messing up my jam." It's hilarious. She's like, "I'm just trying to get into it." It's hilarious. It's ridiculous, and it's Steve Martin, and it's perfect. It's one of the funniest movies. It's always in my top 10 for humor. If anybody says like, "What should I watch tonight?" Watch All of Me, because a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And I've never shown this movie to someone where they didn't just crack up and go, "You were right. That was hilarious." So
there's comic genius in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle, your thoughts, All of Me.
You basically have at the time, probably the power triangle of movie comedy in here, when you have Carl Reiner directing, Lily Tomlin and Steve Martin all in a film together. And Steve Martin I still think people appreciate it, but I still think he is very underrated as a physical comedic actor.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that makes him so brilliant. And I think people underrate that. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've never been a huge Lily Tomlin fan. Just never connected with me completely with her. But I mean, she is a phenomenal actress, and I will give her that due. But I mean, when you pair her up with Steve Martin, it is gold. And again, this isn't my favorite Steve Martin film, but I can see where it would be some people's favorite film. This is another one of these films that I'm surprised they haven't done a more modern remake of this film, because this screams that kind of.
Yeah, you think maybe Jim Carrey would have jumped on a remake of this, with like, can you imagine like if Jim Carrey and maybe Cameron Diaz, like you get the Mask stars together to like remake this or something. I mean, what's interesting too was it was very clever how they would communicate through mirrors. And I thought that was a very clever way, especially in the one that I thought was really cool is when he breaks the mirror and you still see shards of the mirror and you still see her in it. I thought that was very clever. And you just see Steve Martin cooking with his physical comedy, but then you see Lily Tomlin. Yeah. And I like it when he starts to like feel for her, because they can't stand each other at first, but then he does nice things for her because she's this eccentric millionaire that hasn't done anything in her life. And he like does the funeral for her, and he does these other things, and they start to kind of work together. It's got some really like tender moments that way as well, which I liked. And one of the things too that I thought was interesting, I found in the trivia, was that Steve Martin once said of this picture in Morris Wayne Walker's book, Steve Martin, The Magic Years, was, "My mature film started with All of Me, but then ended with LA Story 1991, which is another one of my favorites here." But I feel you're right, Lacey, that I feel like more people need to see that. I remember seeing this in the theater too. I don't remember if I was with my parents or what, but I remember I was laughing. I thought it was great. So yeah. All right, guys. The next film we have is The Evil That Men Do, made over $13 million, and of course is an action movie directed by J. Lee Thompson and starring Charles Bronson, Teresa Saldana. I'd never seen this Charles Bronson film. I found it free on Peacock, Kyle, which is interesting. And the TV or the poster says the most criminals answer to the law. The world's most savage executioner must answer to Brosnan. A professional killer comes out of retirement to investigate the avenge and the brutal murder of an old friend. To kind of sum it up a little bit, he basically comes out of retirement because there is a doctor who's turned evil, and you don't know if his past lies with the Nazis or not, but basically he teaches how to torture people, to communists or dictators, and he's basically asked to find this guy and kill him. And Charles Bronson does Charles Bronson things in this, but what's very clever about it is that he kidnaps the sister of the bad guy in this, and then he does the phone call to prove that she's still alive, and he tapes the conversation, and he tapes her screaming like, help me, help me. He doesn't hurt her, right? And then he uses that tape recorder later on to basically do a very important diversion to where the local townspeople ends up like getting to the bad guy, basically. And there's some really good action scenes in this. Interesting. It is kind of hard to watch in certain scenes. But I thought it interesting. Have you seen this movie, Kyle?
I haven't, but I was kind of at a point with this with Bronson. It felt like everything was just a repeat with him. He was at that point in his career where it's just like, I'm doing the same character over and over again. But there's one real interesting piece of trivia I want to hit on this movie real quick here, Kevin, because it was originally intended that Bronson's real life wife, Jill Iron, play Holland, Bronson's wife's Rihanna. But as associate producer, she advocated for Teresa Saldana to play the role. Saldana had survived being stabbed 10 times with a 5.5-inch hunting knife by an obsessive stalker only 2 years earlier, and was looking to get back into acting in films. After much debate with the producer, Saldana was allowed to play the role and insisted on doing some of her own minor stunts to prove she was physically all right. That same year, Saldana played herself in the film Victim for Victims, the Teresa Saldana story, which reenacted her miraculous survival of the murder attempt.
And Charles Bronson's a good guy. I don't know if you guys know this, but while filming in Mexico, he and his wife, Jill Ireland, took a young orphan under their wings and made sure he was fed and taken care of every day while they were there. The boy got choice of the food from the catering on the film and was allowed to eat before any of the crew got their chance. So I just want to say Charles Bronson, one of the most underrated, cool action guys of all time. Dude was just freaking cool.
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next film we got here. Lacee, by the way, I forgot to ask, have you seen this film?
No.
Yeah, didn't think so. It's obscure. Next film I haven't seen. I know it got some, I think, love with the Academy is Places in the Heart, made over $34 million. The story of a woman fighting for her children, for her land, for the greatest dream there is, the future. Sally Field in Places of the Heart. Co-starring Lindsay Krause, Ed Harris, Amy Madigan, John Malkovich, and Danny Glover's first role, I believe. Takes place in Central Texas in the 30s. A widow with 2 small children tries to save her small 40-acre farm with the help of a blind boarder and a black handyman. Directed by Robert Blanton. Anyone seen this film, Kyle?
I have not.
Lacee, you have.
Yeah. It was one of those ones that was kind of on repeat on TNT or Channel 46 or whatever, on the weekends or whatever. It's not uplifting. It kind of gave Raggedy Man vibes from 82.
Gotcha.
This is basically a widow who's, in the time frame of not being allowed to own property. So you got to prove that you can keep maintaining it and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of bureaucracy towards women trying to make sure that they had to, so she had to have a man on the property. Kind of,
Gotcha.
So and now, it was not something I would necessarily seek out to watch again, but it was an interesting watch the first time.
I believe it got attention in the Oscars, didn't it?
I want to say yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's one of Malkovich's first films as well.
Oh, cool.
He played the blind tenant.
Ah, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never got around to seeing it. It just wasn't a Kevin movie, I guess. All right, guys. The next one we had to bring into the fold here. This is actually a UK TV movie called Threads. This was the UK's version of The Day After, the effects of a nuclear war. Came out a year later. Lacey's shaking her head. I know why. I was curious about this film, and it's a discussion that my wife and I talked about as well. And what's interesting is we actually watched this together when I was in Australia last time. And it's the effects of a nuclear holocaust on the working class in Sheffield, England, and the eventual long-term effects of a nuclear war on civilization. I'm just going to say this. I don't know any of the people that star in this. The director is Mick Jackson. But I do want to say this. Next to The Day After, and there was that other one that we talked about that also came out before The Day After. I'm forgetting what it's called. I just remember that Kevin Costner had a small role in it. But anyway, this one puts The Day After to shreds when it talks about the effects of after a nuclear war hits. And it's not pretty. It's not fun to watch. What I found more interesting about this, though, was that it actually touches on the political intrigue up to the attack. So you get a sense of what's happening in the Middle East and what triggers it and what happens. And then it takes you to a time frame. It lets you know what happened the day of. It lets you know what happened a week after. And then it jumps forward like 5 years and 15 years later of the devastation of a nuclear war. It is brutal. It is disturbing. I will never, ever watch this movie again, but I got to give its cred. It is damn near realistic to what you think will and might happen and is scary AF. Anyone seen this?
No, thank you.
Lacey's, nope, I'm out.
Yep.
Kyle, shaking your head, nope.
Yeah, no, The Day After was it's one of those movies. I get the importance of it, but it's not something I'm going to go seek out to watch.
While shooting the movie, the BBC got in trouble with local police when they detonated a large smoke bomb in order to simulate a nuclear explosion. Members of the public who were not aware that a movie was being shot panicked and thought it was a real explosion. And U.S. television magnate Ted Turner wanted to air this film on TBS, his cable TV network, but couldn't find a sponsor. So he decided to broadcast the film out of his own pocket. So there you go. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into a more happier topic, guys. You guys like dancing? I know we like dancing. Let's talk about some break dancing. And for those of you who know, 84 was the year of breakdancing movies. We've already talked about Breakin'. We've also talked about Beat Street. And coming up in December, we'll be talking about Breakin' 2. But did you know that Lorenzo Lamas starred in a movie called Body Rock? And yes, that is a VHS copy I'm holding up because it's the only damn copy I could find of this movie. And yeah, so Lorenzo Lamas, Chili, is just a guy from the streets with a talent for breakdancing when his wicked move catches the eye of an industry pro. Chili finds his dreams of fame and fortune coming true for better or for worse. Of course, starring Lorenzo Lamas, Vicky Frederick, and Cameron Dye, as we know from certain 80s films. We love Cameron Dye, of course, in Valley Girl and other films and such. Lacey, have you seen Body Rock?
I know I've seen it a million years ago. I did watch a copy of it. Part of it, I got through about like 40 minutes before I was just like, I can't. It's delicious 80s cheese. It's just delicious 80s cheesy goodness. I couldn't watch the end of it. I had to go, and then I just haven't watched the rest of it yet. Delightful, yes. Rewatchability. I feel like there needs to be tequila involved. I'm just saying. Yeah.
Kyle?
There definitely needs to be something mind-altering involved if you're going to try to watch this the whole way through. I tried. I gave it an honest effort. After about 30 minutes, I was just like, "This is just, it's hard."
Well,
I guess for me, part of it is trying to take Lorenzo Lamas seriously when he's trying to be serious. And it's just the unintentional comedy aspect of it. You know,
oh, there's a lot of unintentional comedy in this movie. Yes,
yeah. It's something I have promised Kevin I will try to give it another chance here, but yeah, it was just.
Which means no. You can find it. You can find it for free on YouTube. You can definitely look it up. I got to give it its props though for its dance sequences. There's a young kid in the beginning of the film who just, I'm guessing 10 or 11, just has some wicked breakdance moves and teaches the lead character Lorenzo Lamas some moves. And they got really clever with some of the group dance scenes that I think actually outshined the first Breakin' movie by far, especially when it comes to the production of the outfits and the music and the black light on cool designed clothes and stuff like that. It's definitely worth a look if you're into that. It's filmed in New York too, which is kind of cool. But yes, there's definitely some unintentional comedy. Ray Sharkey's in it, of course, from the Wise Guy TV series. Some definitely, it's entertaining if you want some good cheesy dance moves, if that's what you're into. So yeah. All right, guys. Next, we've got Heartbreakers. I'm gonna guess you guys haven't heard of this film, but I have. Made only $104,000 in the theater release. Blue, a struggling painter, and Eli, the son of a businessman, are childhood friends who have complicated romantic relationships, which slowly expose the state of their own friendship. Director Bobby Roth stars Peter Coyote, Nick Mancuso, Carol Laurie, and Catherine Harold. I'm going to show you this, guys. Check this out. I got a VHS copy here. I'm going to ask you, have you guys seen this film?
Have not seen this film, but I have a feeling I know why you've seen this film.
Well, you tell me why, Kyle. Because you're going to be wrong.
Boobies.
The film was originally rated X by the MPAA, Motion Picture Society Association of America, due to the sex scene between Blue, Eli, and Candy, according to a piece published in the 21st September 1984 issue of the Los Angeles Times newspaper. The article stated that the movie was re-rated with an R rating after director Bobby Roth edited out much of the sexual interplay. And of course, the character Arthur Blue, played by Peter Coyote, is loosely based on fetish painter Robert Blue, son of actor Ben Blue.
So I found this movie, and it's for personal reasons that I have fond memories of this. That has no reason. I didn't know anything about this movie. I used to work for the jewelry industry, and this jeweler who was older than me, I kind of call him, his name's Rich. He passed away about 12 or 13 years ago, became a good friend of mine. He was kind of like the other father in my life. And I learned a lot about music from him and a lot about movies. And we would always talk while we were working at the jewelry store. And I went to his wedding. I knew his wife, and that's how close we were. And he had this movie recorded onto a blank videotape that he recorded off of like HBO or something like that. And we were talking about, I think it might have been Peter Coyote, because I think we were having an ET discussion, because Peter Coyote played the guy with the keys, you know? Yeah. And I had seen him in other stuff before, but I had not seen this film. He's like, well, you got to see this movie Heartbreakers. I said, okay, cool. And I ended up watching it. And he pretty much described it before, he's saying it's a realistic portrayal of two guys with intimacy issues and other issues and still remaining friends in Los Angeles. And of course, there is nudity in this. There's some gorgeous women in this. But it was just a really good movie about two guys being longtime friends, also betraying each other, and overcoming their differences and getting together. And the way that it ends is really cool, on a bus bench of them trying to reconcile their relationship and how they haven't been able to hold serious relationships. And it had a very interesting soundtrack, very 80s interesting soundtrack, but seeing Peter Coyote and Nick Mancuso as the friends, they just killed it. I love this movie, and you can't find this on DVD anywhere. And I think they used to play it on late night television, HBO channel, stuff like that. Have you guys seen this film?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. Well, if you get a chance, find it. Heartbreakers, one of Peter Coyote's lost gems. Just want to give it a shout out. So there you go. All right. Next, we've got
Irreconcilable Differences.
Irreconcilable Differences, guys. We know this one. All right. Made over $12 million in its original theatrical run. They've got everything, including a 10-year-old daughter who's suing them for divorce. Irreconcilable Differences. And it's alternating between the past and the present. A precocious little girl sues her selfish, career-driven parents for emancipation, surprising them both. Directed by Charles Shire. Writers, Nancy Myers, Charles Shizer. Stars Ryan O'Neal, Shelley Long, Drew Barrymore, and Sharon Stone. Lacey, can start with you.
Yeah, it's more dramatic than I thought it would be, based on the picture, like on the outside of the box. But I remember seeing it, in the video store when I worked at Blockbuster a million years ago. It was not something that I'd watch again, but it was, it's about a divorce. It's not like super uplifting. Well, I guess it's not technically divorce. It's the divorce happened. Anyway, yeah, I've seen it. I won't watch it again probably, but it was good.
Yeah.
Not my
Kyle?
tea.
Kyle?
The only thing I'm going to say about this movie, I mean, it's a very dramatic film. It's been a very long time since I've seen it, but never make the girl from Firestarter angry. Doesn't end well.
So, did you like the film though, Kyle?
It was all right. I mean, it's a very interesting cast for the time. You got Sharon Stone before anybody really knew who Sharon Stone was. Obviously, Ryan O'Neal, and this is probably. Are we kind of getting ready to hit the downslope of Shelley Long's apex here, Kevin? About this time?
Well, no, because she goes into Cheers after this.
I thought she was already in Cheers during this.
No, she's starting to go into Cheers, and then Cheers happens a little bit longer, and then it does that. I'm pretty sure anyway. But yeah, there's rumors that she's hard to work with too, which I've heard from several sources. I remember seeing this in the theater, and I went with a group of people because this was like, if I remember, it was a PG film. I think it was. Yeah, PG film. And then Sharon Stone shows up, and well, it's like, oh, whoa, there's nudity there. All right, did not expect that. But yeah, I just remember too, like, oh, Drew Barrymore from E.T., cool, and yeah, it's a tough watch, especially when you see these two parents go through no success and then success, and then it kind of turns the table, and Shelley Long's character ends up buying the house from her husband's character, and now he's out on his own. And yeah, it's a lot of people were going through divorces at that time, a lot of latchkey kids as well, so there's a lot of things that can kind of bring up some bad memories. Yeah. Kyle, do you know if did you look to see if Shelley was still
Shelley was probably in the middle of her apex still here. She left Cheers in '86.
Okay.
And yeah. I think it was shortly after that she did a few movies like Troop Beverly Hills and things like that. But yeah, I think we were kind of like, he was just starting to kind of maybe do that slide.
All right. The last movie we have, guys, we're here. It's The Wildlife. Let's show the DVDs there. Let's show them. Yeah, look at that. We got our copies. Look at that. Yay. Okay. I had no idea this movie existed until Eddie Van Halen passed away. We'll get into that in a second here. But boy, was I glad that I discovered it. This movie is kind of a hidden gem. I was really surprised about this film and surprised about the soundtrack. It came out, made just under $10 million in its theatrical run. 80s teen romp involving Bill in his new apartment, Jim and his rebellious antics, Tom and his crazy self, and Anita and her older man, David, a high school wrestler, parties with his buddy at a swinging singles apartment complex. Directed by Art Linson. Stars Chris Penn, Elin Mitchell-Smith from Weird Science, Eric Stoltz, Jenny Wright, Leah Thompson, and Rick Moranis. I'm going to start with you, Lacey. What are your thoughts on The Wildlife?
I saw this a million years ago. It was super fun and super kind of, it's Cameron Crowe wrote it. We all know what he went on to do. He's done so many fun things. And of course he went into directing afterwards, but it's interesting to see Cameron Crowe written, directed by someone else. Christopher Penn. Chris Penn is fantastic. Everyone's fantastic. It's kind of do you want to is it American Graffiti meets Valley Girl kind of, or?
Oh, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Kinda?
Yeah.
A little bit, because with kind of like the repetitive phrasing, and then but yeah, it's kind of got that kind of feel to it. I was gonna watch it the other day, and my copy has sadly gone bad, so I ordered another one. So I'll be watching it again because now that we're talking about it, I'm like, I really wanted to see it again. So,
Kyle, have you seen Wildlife?
I actually have not seen Wildlife, but I do have a question for you two. Why does Mr. Penn look like Bill S. Preston Esquire on the cover of this DVD?
He does a little bit. It's weird. He's got this bleach blonde hair there. Yeah, hold on. Let me show you there,
Can you
Lacee.
get that?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
That bleach blonde on the far end. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The cast is pretty impressive, if you ask me, guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very much so.
And one of the things that surprised me was I was always a big Jenny Wright fan, and I always wanted to see more stuff that she was in. I'd never seen this film. First of all, it was Near Dark that I first learned of Jenny Wright, and then she just disappeared. Like, where did she go as an actress? And for Near Dark fans, we've all wondered that. And I did a podcast, a Couch Potato Theater of Near Dark with my wife, Erin, and we actually found out what happened to Jenny Wright now that she started making convention appearances. And it's an interesting, I don't want to tease it here, but you can check out the network, look under Near Dark, Couch Potato Theater, and we talk about that. But she was fantastic in this. And she works with Rick Moranis in this 80s clothing store, of course, in the 80s in a mall. And Rick Moranis is, basically, as we would say back in the day, trying to scam on her, she's not having it. And, this has one of the most epic 80s party scenes in a film I've ever seen, right? And I don't understand why this movie hasn't seen more life. And for some odd reason, Ronnie Wood, as people know him, legendary guitarist for the Rolling Stones and for Rod Stewart, has a 2-second cameo in the party pulling out this gigantic turkey and passing it around. Don't know why he's in there.
Like you do.
It's what you do. And Leah Thompson's great in this too. And like I said, I didn't know about this movie until Eddie Van Halen. The soundtrack was composed and recorded by Eddie Van Halen. Only 3 future Van Halen songs ever came out from the music in this movie. One is Good Enough from 1986 release 5150. And Kyle, the second is Right Now from 1991 release for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, which we did a podcast on the Hair Metal podcast about. And the other is Blood and Fire, didn't appear till 2012's A Different Kind of Truth album, which was if I remember correctly, the last Van Halen album they actually recorded. And in a scene where Tommy jumps out of the window, the music scored by Eddie Van Halen is the exact recording of the music used in Back to the Future when Marty puts a cassette in the Walkman to wake up George McFly. Highly underrated 80s teen comedy. It needs to be seen if you haven't seen it. Lacey.
Hot take on Randy Quaid's character.
Yes.
I believe this is the prequel to Vacation. I feel like his character and his issues.
Vietnam PTSD that he has. Yes.
Yeah, he has some PTSD from Vietnam, and I think that could conceivably lead it because he didn't play it. He didn't play the PTSD as like anger. It was like kind of oddly comical, like he does. But yeah.
And Sherilyn Fenn has a small part in this as well. It's really
loaded. It's a loaded film.
Yeah, and the music, other than the Van Halen stuff, it's got a great soundtrack here. And the picture that I have up here shows the list of it. I just don't understand why this movie got lost in the ether. Maybe it was the music rights that was obviously a reason for it, but you can find it on DVD. The Vault Universal series is the copy that we have here. And Jenny Wright, she was great in this. Looked great too as well. My crush still stands on Jenny Wright. So there you go. All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. This is, of course, Time Warp 1984 Part 9, September. Let's go ahead and let's wrap it up here. This is Time Warp Movies of 1984. And to tease next month, we've got some movies that I think you guys may have heard about. We've got Terminator, Silence of the Heart, Firstborn, Body Double, Thief of Hearts, The Razor's Edge, Crimes of Passion, Second Time Lucky, Teachers, Savage Streets, and The Perils of Gwendolyn in the Land of the Yik Yak. Before we end this, let me get your thoughts on Time Warp 1989. Sorry, Time Warp 1984 Part 9 of September. Kyle.
TV. I mean, there's a couple of films in here that are known and stand out. But this episode was really about the TV, because it blows everything away. Obviously, you have Amadeus, which is the big Oscar winner for that year. But I mean, as far as just a pop culture impact, the TV blows away the films in this group. Other than the fact that Canon Films was highly successful at this point.
That's a good point. Yeah, TV more memorable than the movies, possibly. Yeah. Lacey, your thoughts on this month of 1984, September?
I agree. Lots of good TV, but between All of Me and Wildlife, I think that this was a fun little minute for movies too. So between Wildlife and All of Me and maybe even Amadeus, that's 3 weekends out of September. So
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely a banger month for television. Completely agree. With a few little hidden gems here. The one that, of course, jumps out for me, of course, is the Wildlife. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you, Lacey. Thank you, Kyle. Join us next time for October of Time Warp 1984. We got some fun stuff to talk about there. And until next time, guys, we will see you back in time.